It's safe to say that in the 2020s, the main look has been the Y2K revival. Ever since the thing in 2020 happened, people started to look into the past, where everything seemed more fun and simplistic as a form of escapism. But I've noticed recently that there's an uptick of 1960s styles. Hints of the mid-20th century is basically the look of the summer. I see references to vintage styles on social media and even when I go shopping. I'm going to discuss the context of 60s styles, how it would be referenced over time, and why we see references of it today. But to start, I'm going to list out particular styles that were popular in the 60s and today. So let's get started with some micro trends. Flat shoes. Throughout the 20th century, heels were generally expected for women to wear on a daily basis, but the heel itself wasn't too high. But in the 1960s, even shorter heel or completely flat shoes were becoming the new trendy footwear. While flat shoes such as Mary Jane's were more associated with children's clothing, the growing youth movement showcased adults sporting pieces that were generally regarded as childish. And today, flat shoes are more commonplace than ever. Mary Jane and Oxford-style shoes are now particularly trendy, which I'm really here for. Bold colors. Starting in the 1950s, there was an increase of bright colors being seen on a mainstream level. Bright colors would only get more popular in the 1960s, with the rise of Technicolor and with the trend of pop art. This was often complemented with extravagant geometric patterns as well as floral statements. While the style of the 2010s was of having a simplistic muted color palette, in the 2020s we were introduced to the concept of dopamine dressing, where sporting outfits with bright colors and patterns can actually boost your mood, which is something a lot of people needed in the early part of the decade. Geometric patterns and vibrant colors are now very much in style, red being a particularly popular one this year. Collared tops. This was a continuation of 1950s fashion. Collars were becoming more elaborate with the rise of Peter Pan collars. This was another popular feature in children's clothing that would soon be adopted as an adult fashion staple. The style possibly referencing the idea of never growing up, and was inspired by school uniforms. In recent years, the Peter Pan collar was regularly shown in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and with Lexi from Euphoria, which switches things up from the more frequently shown Y2K revival looks. These types of collars are now frequently seen fitting into the look of the massively popular coquette aesthetic. Bows. Throughout the 20th century, bows were a popular hair accessory for girls, but would soon be adopted by women as a fashion statement. For a long time, bows had childish connotations, but were then used as another example of how the reclamation of youthful pieces was a centerpiece of 1960s aesthetics. And in the discussion of current trends, where do I even get started with bows? Bows are simply everywhere now, even being sported on red carpet events. The popularity of bows challenges the idea that girly aesthetics are childish and something that should be grown out of. And they're no longer just hair accessories. They're also frequently seen on tops, dresses, jeans, everything. The bow explosion was launched by the rise of the coquette and balletcore aesthetics gaining popularity. Those aesthetic meme pages really help pop these looks up. Given how popular bows were in the past, the current bow motif undoubtedly takes inspiration from mid-20th century looks. Hayline dresses. In the 1950s, the common dress style included a tight-fitting top with a bouffant skirt to accentuate the waist. But in 1965, the Mondrian collection by Yves Saint Laurent was made as a tribute to modern artists. The angular geometric design directly took notes from suprematist paintings of the 1910s. The silhouette showed a looser-fitting, almost box-shaped cut with a shorter hemline. This collection would become the baseline for many popular dress designs for the rest of the decade, continuing the trend of youthful styles. This style of dress became so popular that Saint Laurent stated, "I hate Mondrian now." In the 2010s, very tight-fitting bodycon dresses were the most popular dress silhouette. By the early 2020s, there was an increase in flowy, loose-fitting cuts, largely popularized by the cottagecore trend. We now see a newfound version of this dress style, with more direct 60s references, which I speculate is only about to grow in popularity. Gingham. In the early 20th century, gingham was very popular in the United States. The print would gain further attention when it was showcased by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, being a reflection of Dorothy Gale's small-town roots. Gingham would then be one of the most common patterns in the 50s and 60s. In the 2020s, gingham is the current pattern. With its particular popularity in the summer, It reflects a laid-back, simplistic vibe, as well as a youthful sense. So now that we listed some styles that were popular in the 60s, I couldn't help but wonder how exactly these looks came to be. 1960s fashion looked completely different from other generations. A huge factor of this is the baby boom. There's now a larger population of young adults than ever before. As mentioned before, there was an increase in fashions that took inspiration from children's clothing. The innovative miniskirt was probably the best reflection of this. Mary Quant, who popularized the miniskirt and pretty much made the swinging London look, stated, "I didn't want to grow up. Perhaps that's something to do with it," which essentially sums up the thesis of the style. One of the most popular looks of the 60s was the mod look, but it was known as less of a style but more of a subculture, defined by its interest in pop art and psychedelic music. By the late 90s and early 2000s, with entering the new millennium, there were some inspirations from 1960s space looks. Another probable reason for this is because of Austin Powers, though I'm only speculating on that. Another piece of media that pays homage to the 60s was Totally Spies. This show is designed with a retro-futuristic look, conveyed by the designs of the environments. The bright and bold color palette is a wink to the mod aesthetic, and every now and then, there would be some occasional references to this era. In 2004, the Fantanas even came out with a new look, showcasing space-age-inspired outfits. And in the late 2000s and early 2010s, the very 60s-inspired twee style would become one of the more dominating looks of the era. Celebrities like Alexa Chung and Zooey Deschanel were essentially the queens of this aesthetic. The twee look was a reflection of the up-and-coming hipster trend, which embraced anything and everything vintage. At the same time, pop singers would craft their image with 60s inspirations. I would say that Lana Del Rey helped popularize this look for artists. Her public image was of old Hollywood glamour mixed with 2012 Instagram filter brand of dreariness. Marina and the Diamonds had a similar essence for her Electra Heart album, but her looks were more bright and colorful, matching the upbeat dance pop sound. And I would say, if you wanted to understand what early 2010s Tumblr looked and sounded like, watch any music video from this era. And as Taylor Swift was steering away from country pop to straight pop, she'd rebrand with a mid-20th century inspired Americana-type look. This style helped emphasize her good girl image, but I saw her wearing some Dolores Haze sunglasses. Ariana Grande's My Everything era was defined by the mod look. One of her outfits in the Problem video directly referencing Sweet Charity, and the entire plot of the Break Free video is an homage to Barbarella. The Love Witch came out in 2016, made as a love letter to late 60s, early 70s horror movies. I didn't know about this movie back in 2016, and I suppose a lot of people didn't. But with the help of sites like Tumblr, it would gain more visibility and is now one of the most notable contemporary witch movies. The outfits shown were seductive, as well as soft and innocent. Some of the pieces shown were real vintage clothing from the time period. It's any coquette girlie's paradise, and I would theorize that this movie helped take notice and interest in vintage-inspired looks. By the 2020s, there were some pop culture moments that helped push 60s inspirations into the limelight. One of these was the Barbie movie. This movie was known to help popularize the Barbie core aesthetic, but it also heavily incorporated retro styles. The costume designer, Jacqueline Durand, based the styles off of early 60s French Riviera and Brigitte Bardot. This type of retro aesthetic was most prevalent around the beginning of the movie. The story begins with Barbie waking up in her prim and polished sleepwear, with Peter Pan collars and a bow on her hair, referencing aforementioned 60s styles. This is actually my second favorite outfit in the movie. And then we see her most iconic look, a pink gingham dress with her hair pulled back by a matching bow. Coincidentally, the outfit features two of the biggest trends of the moment, bows and gingham. After Barbie gets an existential crisis, she later has on my favorite look in the entire movie, a directly mod-inspired outfit of an A-line dress with a Peter Pan collar, along with ruffles at the wrists. And then we continue to see looks featuring this type of collar and even more bows. The retro aesthetic was prevalent not only in the costuming, but also in the set designs, which took inspirations from mid-20th century Californian architecture. The Barbie movie was the highest grossing movie of 2023, and as someone whose channel is centered on girly media, I can't lie when I say I sort of love that. And as a result of its success, it contributed to current styles and trends. In the same year, Priscilla came out, And I think this is the first time I've seen a movie operate as a diss track. And it was directed by the legend herself, Sofia Coppola. And I theorize that this movie also helped bring attention to 60s styles. This movie feels like a 20th century version of Marie Antoinette, showcasing the trials of a teenager entering adulthood while living in an environment that isn't particularly kind to them. But unlike Marie Antoinette, this isn't a tragic story, but instead we get a bittersweet ending. I actually saw this movie in theaters, and there wasn't a single dry eye at that screening. And if 2023 was the year cinema came back, 2024 would be the year pop music would come back. Though I can't say that it ever really left. But Sabrina Carpenter is excelling in the music industry with her summertime ready brand of bubblegum pop. After years of being looked over in the music industry, she's finally getting her flowers, with the help of her crafting an eye-catching image. The music video for her breakout song, Espresso, showcases lots of references to the mid-20th century, particularly with the use of gingham patterns, hair bows, and her now famous swimsuit. Sabrina cultivated a very stylized, hyper-girly, vintage-esque image. I would guess that her inspiration seems to be a 60s it girl mixed with a real-life Barbie doll. I predict that later on, we'll start to see the 1970s getting a similar revival moment. The 2000s look was heavily based on 70s aesthetics, and considering the Y2K revival is one of the dominating aesthetics of the 2020s, this shouldn't be too far-fetched. But one thing's for sure is to not let trends of the moment dictate your style. Let yourself wear the clothes instead of the clothes wearing you. I had a lot of fun talking about this, and I hope to see you all in the next one.